Hey besties, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. I am super excited for the recommendation video that we're doing today.
It's time for the 13 Nights of Saraween.
As some of you may know, I'm currently doing the 13 Nights of Saraween, where I post 13 videos leading up to Halloween, and I originally had a very set schedule on the videos I was doing, but then Miss Taylor Swift came out with her new album and I'm obsessed. Like, I'm so obsessed. Like, it has actually stopped me from reading books because I cannot stop listening to Midnights. I think this might be my favorite album that she's ever put out. I feel like she took all of her styles from a bunch of different albums and put them all in one place, and she's just chef's kiss. 10 out of 10. If you don't like this album, I do think it's because you don't like to have fun. I said what I said and I'm not taking it back. But anyway, enough of the ranting and raving. I'm going to be recommending a book for every single song on Midnights, and not just regular Midnights, but the 3 a.m. edition. Also, it's 12:24 while I'm filming this, so it's very fitting to be filming after midnight for Midnights. So the first song on the album is Lavender Haze, and I know that Taylor said that she wrote this for Joe, but in my humble opinion, this is a gay song. It's very gay. I do need to make a side note that I am a self-proclaimed gayler, so if you're a hetler, the door's over there. The book that I'm going to be recommending for this song is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. The cover itself is so fitting because it literally has a lavender cover. As you might predict, this book is a sapphic romance. At the very start of this book, we have our main character Delilah. She's waking up from a one-night stand with a girl that she can't remember the name of, and she gets a phone call from her estranged stepsister, and her stepsister reminds her, hey, you agreed to do the photography at my upcoming wedding. And she's like, oh shit, I forgot about that. The sapphic romance comes in when Delilah arrives in town and starts a little bit of a romance with one of the bridesmaids that's in the wedding party. Delilah's whole thing is that she likes to appear like she doesn't care what people think of her, and she tries to shirk responsibility and expectation, and I feel like that really connects with the lyrics in the song when Taylor is talking about being damned if she cares and damned if she doesn't care, and no matter what she does with her attitude, people always have expectations of her, and I feel like Delilah goes through that a lot in this book as well. And overall, it's just a really cute, really steamy, just really good sapphic romance, and I feel like you should pick it up. The next song on this album is Maroon, and this is without a doubt a gay song. I could listen to you with an argument about Lavender Haze actually being about Joe Alwyn, but this song is absolutely about a woman. There's no denying it. At this point, it's just reading comprehension. So for this song, I had to go with a classic, our bisexual queen, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So in this book, we have our main character, Evelyn Hugo. She's a starlet, think like Marilyn Monroe, and she is very famous for having had 7 husbands. All throughout her career, everyone has criticized her for dating so many people, marrying so many people. They've just called her boy crazy. They don't really understand it. There's a lot of ups and downs because of how people view her in her relationships, giving very much Taylor Swift. She's never really revealed the story of all of her relationships to the public, and so she contacts a journalist at the start of this novel to write a tell-all biography about it, and this book is basically her telling this story to the journalist and just revealing all, and there is a sapphic romance in this that is just so good. All the imagery that Taylor has in this song really reminds me a lot of Evelyn and Celia. Even the part where she talks about the wine and spilling it, like the first time that they hang out, they drink wine together, and everything about it, just like your scarlet lips are home, like all of that is just like so this book. It's me. The next song on the album is Antihero, which is definitely one of my favorites. It is the song that contains the infamous line, sometimes I feel like everybody is a sexy baby, but that is not the line that I used to come up with this book recommendation. So in the chorus, Taylor talks about being the problem and realizing in her relationship she's the one that's making issues for herself. And so for this, I have chosen In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, because everyone in this book is a problem. Like, literally everyone is unlikable and has a lot of problems. So in this book, we have a group of college friends, and unfortunately their senior year, one of them gets murdered, and it sort of goes unsolved for a decade, and now they're at a college reunion, and we end up with a sort of closed circle murder mystery. Someone in the group is trying to figure out how this girl died, who did it, who's lying, and so there is a lot of unlikable characters in this. It has a little bit of dark academia vibes. Everything about this is a little bit divisive because some people love the fact that everyone in this is not likable, and then some people really hate that. I obviously love that. I thought the writing in this was fantastic. I loved the characterization of everyone hiding secrets. The way it's told is told out of order. So our main character, who's actually like giving us the story, Jessica, is a little bit unreliable as she's kind of giving us the details, but I loved everything about this book. And it's like snow at the beach, weird but fucking beautiful. The next song on the album is Snow on the Beach. This is not one of my favorites. This is probably one of my least favorites, actually. This is the song that supposedly Lana Del Rey is on, but we can't hear her. Where are you, girly? I have yet again chose another sapphic book for this. I chose This Is How You Lose the Time War. This is a masterpiece of a book. Okay, let me tell you how this all connects. In the first verse, Taylor says, "One night a few moons ago, I saw flecks of what could have been lights, but it might have just been you passing by unbeknownst to me." And then in the chorus, when she and supposedly Lana Del Rey are singing, she says, "And it's like snow at the beach, weird but fucking beautiful." Weird but fucking beautiful is the exact sentence I would use to describe This Is How You Lose the Time War. What exactly is this time war and what are they fighting about? I don't really know. I read this a long time ago. Also, the writing in this is very, very lyrical and poetic. So there are times where you just have to vibe because you might not know what's going on. I would say the first half of this novella, I was like, what the fuck am I reading? And then the second half of this novella, it all clicked and I was like, yes. Because the world building is very light because it's a novella. But basically we have this time war and we've got these time agents and they're like the best agents on either side. Like they get the best missions. They're like the most reliable. They're just like really good at what they do. And so one of them writes a letter to the other being like, hey, you're the only worthy opponent in this war, so I want to like compete with you. And so then they start writing letters to each other through time and they leave them in special spots. It's like very interesting because they don't just like leave pieces of paper. Sometimes they like write them in these like hidden places. Like I think there's one time where they like write the message on like a bee's wing and it's just like very poetic. Like I need to emphasize how lyrical and poetic this is. Like it's weird but fucking beautiful.
You're on your own, kid. You always have been.
The next song on the album is You're on Your Own, Kid. And for this, I got a little bit creative with how I interpreted it. I feel like Taylor Swift is just talking about the beginning of her career in this song and how she kind of had to work really hard and she was on her own in the beginning. And so for this, I chose Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. But the lyrics of You're on Your Own, Kid really made me think of Daisy Jones and the Six because of how it's about these people who are just like building up their music careers. And so in this book, we have Daisy Jones, who is an independent artist, and then we have a band, The Six. And so they are both really popular in their own right, and so then they basically get asked by their record label to combine for a bit to create an album, and it's all about what happened when they did that because it was kind of like an explosive experience. I just love the character of Daisy Jones. She reminds me a lot of the sentiment of You're on Your Own, Kid because she is self-made. She really just goes out there and tries to make things happen for herself. This book is so phenomenal. When I read it for the first time, I read it twice in a row because I loved it so much. This book has really stuck with me and I just really feel like Daisy Jones is that girl.
He was sunshine, I was midnight.
The next song on the album is Midnight Rain, which I personally think is a banger. It's one of my favorites. And for this, I chose People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. So in this book, we have Poppy and Alex, who are best friends. They met in college, and they've always had this tradition of going on vacation together every summer. But unfortunately, 2 years ago, they had a falling out, and they haven't spoken since. And so now Poppy works as a travel journalist. All of her different vacations that she went on with Alex helped her build up her career. She wrote a blog about it, and eventually was able to find a job with that. But now that she has her dream job, and she feels like she's achieved everything that she set out to achieve, and she's living in New York City, she sort of sits back and thinks, why am I still unhappy? And she thinks back to the last time she was happy, and that was when she went on vacation with Alex. This is a friends to lovers romance that is just so precious. I think what really makes me relate it to Midnight Rain is the contrast between Alex and Poppy's characters. Alex is an extremely safe person. After they graduate, he moves to a small town and becomes a teacher, and Poppy has always been described as a wild child. She has big dreams. She wants to move to New York City. She wants to have this travel journalist job. She just has a lot of things that she wants out of her life, and so because of that, it never really matches up for her and Alex to make sense as a couple. And so this is just a really touching friends to lovers romance where they've clearly always had feelings for each other, but because of how different they are, they just can't make it work. And so this just like perfectly encapsulates all the lyrics of Midnight Rain.
Can I ask you a question?
The next song on the album is Question, and this is one that could be interpreted as a gay song, but I unfortunately did not pick a gay book for it. Overall, I think that this song is giving out second chance romance vibes, so I thought to myself, what's my favorite second chance romance? And for that, I have Persuasion by Jane Austen. In the song, Taylor talks about circumstances not being right, making bad choices, and just not ending up together, and that is what this book is all about. So in this book, we have Anne Elliot, who's from a fairly well-to-do family, and when she was 19, she falls in love with Captain Wentworth. Unfortunately, at this time, he's not yet a captain, he's just in the Navy, and so everyone around her convinces her that he's below her station and that she should not marry him, and so she has to break his heart. And now it's been 9 years and he's back in town, and Anne doesn't know what to do with herself because she kind of dropped the ball. She did not get with Captain Wentworth when she should have, and now she's in her late 20s, which at the time pretty much makes her a spinster, and she's just like, damn, I need to get back with this guy. I just feel like all the questions that Taylor is asking in the song about if you regret things, if you wish that you had fought more, if you wish you had kept the relationship going, all apply to this book. I feel like these are things that both Anne and Captain Wentworth wondered for a long time.
Lately I've been dressing for revenge.
The next song on the album is Vigilante Shit. So in this song, Taylor talks about dressing for revenge. Obviously it's called Vigilante Shit, so of course I had to pick They Never Learned by Lane Fargo. So in this book we have our main character Scarlett, who is a college professor, and her whole thing is killing men. Not just any men, but men who deserve it. So any man on campus that has committed a crime that he did not get punished for, she will get them. She's been getting away with this for many years, but unfortunately this school year, administration is starting to piece things together, and they're like, why are there so many suicides happening on campus? What's going on here? And so she has to cover up what she's doing. There's not really more I need to say about this. It very much fits Vigilante Shit. If you love a book about a woman fucking men up, you should read this.
Just believe I'm still bejeweled. When I walk in the room, I can still make the whole place shimmer.
Next on the album, we have Bejeweled, which is another bop, another favorite of mine. This song gives off the vibe of a woman who doesn't really care what people think of her. She did in the past, but she's not doing that anymore. She's proving everyone around her wrong. She's shining because she's a jewel. For this, I really wish that I could choose Legally Blonde, but it's not a book, and I don't read a lot of books with this plot line. The only one that I have read is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I actually gave this book 3 stars, but it has generally high reviews on Goodreads, and people tend to like this, so I don't mind putting it on my recommendation list because it was a cute book. So we have our main character Piper. She's a spoiled rich girl, and at the very start of the book she goes through a breakup. So in her emotional state, she decides to break into a hotel pool with a group of friends, and she unfortunately gets arrested. Her rich stepfather is not vibing with that life decision, so he decides to send her to a small town in Oregon to learn a lesson. Piper's birth father actually owned a bar in this small town, and he was a fisherman that passed away, and so her stepdad sends her there to take over the bar and learn a lesson and responsibility by trying to make it successful again. And obviously when Piper gets to this small town, she falls in love with a rugged fisherman. The reason I really relate this to the song Bejeweled is the fact that by the end of the book, Piper is shining. She's learned a lesson. She's like a powerful baddie. She doesn't care what people think of her anymore, and it's a whole journey that really encapsulates what I feel like this song is trying to say. Also, Piper wears a lot of sequins in this book, so she's quite shiny.
I'm falling in love.
The next song on the album is Labyrinth. In my opinion, the general message of the song is being afraid to fall in love, and so for this I chose Beach Read by Emily Henry. I am gonna tell you right now, all 3 of Emily Henry's romance books are on this list, so if you don't like Emily Henry, I'm so sorry. So in this book we have our main character January, and she is a romance writer that is currently experiencing writer's block. Her father recently passed away, and after he died she discovered that he had a mistress the whole time he was married to her mother. In his will, her father actually left her a beach house, but unfortunately it is the beach house that he used to use to meet the woman he was having an affair with. So January is not looking forward to going to this beach house to close up all the affairs, but when she gets to this beach house she discovers that her neighbor is this man named Gus, who she actually went to grad school with. He is also an author, and he writes literary fiction, and he's also experiencing writer's block. They end up kindling a friendship, and to get over their writer's block they decide to trade genres. So Gus is going to write a romance book and January is going to write a literary fiction book, and so they teach each other how to write each other's genres, and it's just a really sweet romance that unfolds. And the reason that this song and Being Afraid to Fall in Love really applies to this book is the fact that January is so hurt by what her father did, and so there's a lot of grief in her going through that and her being afraid to give Gus a chance because of this experience that she's had. And it's just a really beautiful romance that has serious moments, funny moments. It's just overall very, very cute, and we love Gus. The next song, Karma, is actually the best song on the album. And if you disagree, you don't like having fun. For this song, I have chosen Hench by Natalie Zena Wellschotz. As I talk about this book, you might think that it's a little bit of a stretch to compare it to the song, but it's all gonna come around in the end. This book takes place in a world where superheroes and supervillains sort of run everything. So we're following a woman named Anna who works for a temp agency that specializes in henchmen. So she's basically a hench that works for supervillains, and she typically does clerical work, but through a series of events, she actually ends up working on site one day for a supervillain, and a superhero shows up to save the day, and he ends up hurting a bunch of people on scene, and she ends up becoming permanently disabled. After she gets hurt and is in the hospital, she tries to tell everyone that the hero is the one that did this to her, and no one is listening to her. So this is her villain origin story. I will say, I feel like the point of karma is that you don't have to do anything because karma is going to get the people that are your enemies. And in this book, Anna very much takes karma into her own hands and she starts planning against the superheroes. So now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't know if this fits the song that well, but I'm still keeping it because I absolutely love the song Karma and I absolutely love this book. And I do feel like perhaps Anna is just karma. She's making the karma happen. She's forcing it. It's just a really good book and it's very underrated. So I'm gonna leave it on this list, even though I've kind of talked myself out of it being for the song.
I find myself running home to your sweet nothings.
So the next song on the album is Sweet Nothing, and I do think that this one is actually about Joe Allen. This song is by far the most wholesome on the album, and so for that I have Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery, because this is an extremely wholesome book. So we have these siblings, Matthew and Marilla, and they own a farm, and they decide they're going to adopt a little boy to help them out. Is that child labor? Probably, but that's neither here nor there. Unfortunately, at the orphanage, there's a mix-up, and they actually send a little girl who is Anne. And so when Anne arrives, they're not really sure what to do with her. They're not sure if they should return her, but she ends up winning their hearts, and they decide to keep her, and they just don't have help on the farm anymore, and they just have this beautiful little girl, Anne. This is actually a 7-book series, and it just follows Anne all throughout her life. Anne is just such a delightful character. She's so whimsical. She's so imaginative. She's just so cute. I think the verse in this song that made me think of Anne the most is when it says, "On the way home, I wrote a poem. You say what am mine? This happens all the time." That verse really made me think of Anne because she loves writing in this series and she shares it with the people around her, and everyone is always very impressed with the way that she thinks. Everybody really loves her and loves being around her. She's just kind of one of those people that people just feel really warm when they're with, and so she's wholesome. This song is wholesome. It just, they go together, okay? They go together.
What if I told you I'm a mastermind?
Next up, we have Mastermind. This is very much a song that belongs to Joe Goldberg from You by Caroline Kepnes. This book is from the point of view of a stalker writing to the girl that he's stalking. Our main character, Joe, is a bookseller, and one day this girl, Beck, walks in, and he's like, I like the looks of her. So he starts stalking her, and the whole book is him kind of mastermind planning how he's going to get her into a relationship with him. Even if you've already seen the TV show, I would really recommend this book because the reading experience is unlike any other, because you're really in the head of a sociopath, and it's so intriguing and interesting. And what will really get you is that Joe is so charming that as you're reading him doing these fucked up things and stalking this girl, you'll start being like, "Aw, Joe," and then you're like, "Oh." And if you don't want to read the book, you could also just watch the Netflix show because that's also very good.
All throughout the Great War.
The next song on the album is The Great War. I don't really know what Taylor Swift is trying to say in this song, but it was giving me a lot of fantasy vibes. So I decided to go with House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is an urban fantasy series that takes place in a city called Crescent City. Our main character is a girl named Bryce who is half fae, half human. At the very start of this book, someone close to her is murdered by a demon, and now we're 2 years later and crimes very similar to what happened to her friend are happening again, and so she gets roped in to solving what happened to her friend with the help of an angel who's kind of like a cop of some sort. I know that's a very vague description of what this book is about, but I really feel like you should just like read it and get to know what's going on in it. It's a really beautiful story. It's so fucking long, but it's so good. The world building in this is fantastic. It's amazing. I was not a Sarah J. Maas fan before I read this. Like, I had DNF'd a lot of her books and I was not a fan. I was a hater, honestly. And I read this for a vlog where I read authors that I had previously not liked, and I am converted. Obviously, all the imagery in this song from Taylor Swift is very fantasy-esque, and that's obviously why I chose this book. But there are some lyrics that make me think of Bryce with both her friend that died as well as the angel cop that she's like solving murders with and like falling in love with. She says, "My hand was the one you reached for all throughout the Great War." And I feel like that applies to Bryce's relationship both with the friend that passed away and the guy that's like in this book as well.
You were bigger than the whole sky. You were more than just a short time.
The next song on the album is Bigger Than the Whole Sky, which is by far the saddest song on the album. It's the only one that's made me cry. For this song, I've chosen The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. So this is a very heartbreaking and raw book about a little girl named Chrissy who's 8 years old. At the very start of the book, she kills a little boy in her town, and it sets off a bunch of events that lead to her getting caught. And at the very start, she's very proud of herself for killing this boy, and we soon uncover there's a lot more to the story. I actually picked this book up because I thought it was a thriller. Katie Coulson read it on her channel, and she read the first line where it talks about Chrissy killing a little boy and being happy about it, and I thought it was just about like a child killer, and I was not prepared for what this book was actually about. This book is actually more about child neglect and what brought Chrissy to this point where she thought it was okay to do something like this. And throughout the book, we follow Chrissy through two timelines, one of them being when she's 8 and does this crime, and the other one being when she's an adult and is now a single mother trying not to make the same mistakes that her mother made. This song represents grief and loss. I've seen a lot of people relating it to miscarriages and death of loved ones. I was originally going to recommend the book Crying in H Mart because it's a memoir about a girl who loses her mother to cancer. But then I saw a TikTok with this text on it. I'll put a screenshot up where she says, I usually cry like once a month maybe and never post videos like this. But someone said this song reminds them of grieving the version of themselves that could have existed if they never experienced trauma at a young age, and it hurts. And honestly, that interpretation fits this book so much because it is about who Chrissy could have been if she wasn't neglected and abused by her mother, and her childhood just sort of ruined her for the future. The decisions she made as an 8-year-old forever impacted her life, and now she's a single mother trying to figure out how to live despite the trauma that she's experienced and the trauma that she's also inflicted on other people.
We were in Paris.
The next song on the album is Paris. Honestly, it's my least favorite song on the album. I don't really like this song. I don't really have a clear view of what Taylor was trying to say in this song, but the general meaning I got from it is that she doesn't really know what's going on in the world because she is in this love bubble away from everyone. So for this, I chose Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Like I said, all 3 of her books were going to make an appearance in this video. So in this book, we have Nora. She's a literary agent kind of known for being a shark in the publishing industry. She has a long history of boyfriends breaking up with her because they don't find her to be very nice. They find her cold. She's distant. She's not very emotional. And then our love interest is a guy named Charlie, who is an editor working in the publishing industry. And at the very start of the book, they actually have a meeting where Nora is pitching a book, and they have a huge misunderstanding, and ever since, Nora has not liked Charlie at all. Nora's sister is pregnant and wants to go on a sister's trip so that they can get closer before the baby comes, and they go to this very small town called Sunshine Falls. Little does Nora know, this is actually Charlie's hometown, and so while they're in this small town, they meet up and they start falling in love despite their misunderstanding before. And there's just a lot in this about how Nora is not the ideal heroine and Charlie's nobody's hero, and they're just sort of like figuring out life as adults. The reason that I chose this book for the song Paris is the meaning that I was getting out of it, that I was saying about just getting away from the world and being in a love bubble, because Nora and Charlie are falling in love in this small town, sort of away from the world and away from New York City and their normal lives.
High infidelity.
The next song on the album is High Infidelity, and for this I've chosen The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. I don't fully know what Taylor Swift is trying to say in the song. People keep saying the song might be about Taylor Lautner. I don't really know. But when I was reading the lyrics, I really felt like it would fit a thriller because it was giving me very much like unhappy marriage, disillusioned by a relationship. There was the whole question of like, where were you April 29th, which kind of fits into like a murder mystery. And there's very specifically a line where it says your picket fence is sharp as knives, and that made me think of being in a domestic situation where the picket fence life is not quite what you thought it would be. This book is about a girl who was in a sex cult when she was in college. The events leading up to her escaping this cult involved her friend dying by suicide, and now we are 10 years later and her other best friend, who was also in the cult, has also died by suicide in a very similar way to the other friend. So she starts to wonder if perhaps these aren't suicides and they were actually murders. The reason my interpretation of this song fits this book is because the whole concept of this sex cult is making women be submissive, this whole housewife concept of like keeping them in a relationship that is demeaning to women, which all connects just because of the whole domestic housewife vibe. This one might be a stretch, but I said what I said. I still really recommend it. If you like thrillers and you like cults and you like intrigue and dark, just interesting things. I will say there's a lot of violence against women in this, so if that's not your thing in thrillers, this is definitely not for you. But the whole concept of the cult and everything was really interesting, and I really liked it.
I think there's been a glitch.
The next song on the album is Glitch, and my interpretation of this song is falling in love when you weren't supposed to fall in love. The lyrics in this song often refer to the love story as being a glitch or being counterfeit, and so for this I have chosen Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. So in this book we have Cora and we have Dean. Dean is Cora's brother-in-law, and at the very start of the book they get kidnapped by a serial killer whose whole MO is taking people who are not a couple and bringing them together and making them fall in love and then killing them. So they are held captive in a base. Excuse me. So they are held captive in a basement together and they are forced to fall in love. And the reason I feel like this relates to glitch is because when they get out of the basement, they obviously have a very strong trauma bond and they've gone through something very meaningful together, and now they obviously love each other. But Dean is with her sister, like he's supposed to be with her sister, like they're engaged and supposed to be together. And so it's this whole glitch of this was not supposed to happen. They were not supposed to fall in love. It's caused a rift in everyone's lives. And so I don't know, it's a really good book. It is dark, there's a lot of violence in it. It is a dark romance, and the bond between Dean and Cora is just so good. This book is very emotional, but I really liked it.
Would've, could've, should've, if you'd never looked my way.
The second to last song on this album is Would've, Could've, Should've. This is the song that makes Dear John look like a lullaby. For those of you who don't know, when Taylor Swift was 19, she dated John Mayer when he was 32, and that was obviously a relationship with a power imbalance. So the book that I thought was absolutely perfect for this song is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a Dracula retelling from the perspective of his first wife, Constanta. She's writing letters to him, basically describing how abusive their relationship is. And what's so interesting about this book that I feel like really fits the song is that when she first is with Dracula, like when he first sires her, she doesn't really realize how abusive he is, and it takes age and time for her to realize that, which is very much mirroring what happened to Taylor Swift, where obviously when she was young she was really excited about this relationship, but after it ends she realizes how wrong it is. And so Constanta is just like a queen. This is written so poetically and so beautifully. It's very much a good for her story about her just taking back her ownership and kind of getting back at Dracula, and it just is so perfect for this song. If you want just like the most beautiful, like light horror, just poetic, whimsical, lyrical book, this is it.
Dear reader, if it feels like a trap, you're already in one.
The last song on this album is Dear Reader, and I'm going to be 1000% with you guys. I actually don't know what she's trying to say in the song. So I just decided to recommend one of my all-time favorite books, and I'm going to try to convince you why some of the lyrics match with this, but I'm telling you right now it's a stretch. So I am pairing this song with The World Gives Way by Marissa Levian. So to describe the plot of this book, I need to set a scene. When Earth was ending, all the rich people on the planet were like, I don't want to die. So they paid a bunch of scientists and architects to build a spaceship the size of Switzerland that could kind of like recreate a new world for them, and so that they could go off planet and survive. And the whole point of this ship is that it is traveling towards a new planet where they can live on in, I think, about 100 to 200 years. So there's a long journey ahead of them. So the people who get on the ship initially are actually not the ones that are going to be able to live on that planet in the future. And so they get to thinking, well, we don't want to do our own work. Like we don't want to do our own housekeeping. We don't want to cook our own food. We don't want to do these things because we're rich. So they come up with this contract worker system, which is essentially modern day slavery. And so they say to all the poors on Earth, they're like, hey, if you don't want to die in this apocalypse and you want to come on this ship, you can like do this contract thing where you'll all come and just work for us until we get to this planet. But that's going to be a couple generations of basically slaves. So our main character is a girl named Mira who works for a very rich couple. At the very start of the book, the couple actually ends up dying and they leave behind a baby. And so Mira takes this as her opportunity to shirk her contract worker responsibilities, and she kind of goes on the run. And then we have another character named Tobias who is a detective, and he is assigned to her case. And so he's chasing her all across the ship trying to find her. And this book is just so beautiful and interesting and fantastic. Like the world building of this ship is phenomenal. Like in between Tobias and Mira's chapters, there is exposition just kind of describing the history of the ship to you, and it is so good. They absolutely need to make this into like an HBO limited series because I would eat that shit up. This is just so imaginative, and it's such an underrated book. I think it has only like 1,000 reviews on Goodreads, but it's so good. I had to put it on this list even though it doesn't really fit this song that much. I guess we should get into the lyrics that I'm going to stretch to make fit this. So in the first verse it says, Dear reader, if it feels like a trap, you're already in one. Dear reader, get out your map, pick somewhere and just run. Mira is put in this situation that kind of feels like a trap. Like after the couple dies, she has this opportunity to run away and desert her past life, and so she takes this opportunity and she's like running. So that's how I'm connecting it to the lyrics. The rest of the song I don't know. Okay, besties, it is past 2 a.m. and I'm finally done with this list. Let me know down below what your picks for these songs would be. Have you listened to any of these songs and immediately thought of a book? I would love to know down below. I really racked my brain and tried really hard to come up with a really good list, and I feel like I did a pretty good job. If you enjoyed this video and you've made it to the end, please leave the little sparkle emoji down below so that we can connect on the fact that you watched this whole thing. And thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.